and it's time to get my garden in. So I'm going to do a series of garden recovery with Don Weber, and this is how far I've gotten on my garden so far. And you might see it doesn't look like the typical garden, and that's what I like, because I've learned how to garden the way I like to garden and making my garden look the way I want it to look. So I hope you can enjoy this series and learn more about not only gardening, but how to use gardening to help you make progress in your recovery. Learning to do gardening and working with living plants have been just a huge part of my recovery, and learning to be self-sufficient, growing some of my own food, has been tremendously important. All right, so sit back and relax and enjoy Don Weber Garden Recovery. I don't want to do that. All right, so a lot of the gardening starts out with compost. So this is a barrel that I took a whole year to fill, and I'm just capping it off with the scraps that were left over from the barrel from last year. And I'm going to put a layer of dirt on top of it and let that sit for another whole year. So it takes 2 years for me to make compost the way I make compost. And I know there's some compost police out there that'll tell you I'm doing it very wrong, and that's fine, because this is how I do it and this is how it works for me. Very important when you're working on your recovery is you figuring out what works for you. All right, so then this barrel is my new barrel, and I've already started it. See all those nice yummy goodies in there? And it'll take me a whole year to fill this up, and as it's filling up, it'll keep settling down. So then, this is the bottom of the barrel, literally, from the barrel from last year. I've already harvested all the rest of this compost from this barrel, and this is the bottom of the barrel. There's a lot of big pieces in here, and that's because the worms got in the bottom of the barrel, ate a lot of the good compost, and left there's a lot of avocado shells in there, egg shells, avocado pits, and whatnot. So there's a lot of big pieces, but I throw them right into the new barrel. And what I use very, very effectively is, this is an old fan that I took the guts out of, and I put my compost in there and sift it out, and that gives me this. This is a really great quality compost there, and I mix that half and half with the dirt from my garden, and that's called amending my soil, and it puts nutrients. All this compost are all the building blocks of what new plants need to grow. All right, so I'll just give you a quick view of using a sifter. Don't want to put too much in there at one time, or else you won't be able to. Nice batch of worms right there, doing their job. If there's anything I want to break up in there, that's largely avocado shells. My wife eats a lot of avocados. And then I take this over, dump it in the barrel for 2 years from now. And remember, for me it's been so important that gardening for recovery is me making all the decisions myself. How is my garden going to work for my recovery? There's some basic laws of gardening that you can't ignore, like nutrients, sunlight, weeding it, caring about it. You got to follow those principles, or else I don't know what you're going to have, but I doubt it's going to be anything that's going to make you feel better. So every time I make a decision about how my garden's going to work, it makes me feel better. And that's the whole idea behind recovery. How are you going to feel better? If you're like me, you're still going to struggle with depression a little bit, but guess what? I'm not struggling with depression right now. I'm out in the garden feeling good about what I'm doing. This batch of compost has been in the works for a while. I've been doing a lot of planning. Now I'm harvesting really, really good compost. Some eggshells, maybe I'll break them up a little bit more. Takes them a long time to break down and get in the soil. Calcium, real important nutrient for especially tomatoes. I'll go dump this in a... What is this? The barrel for when? Next year? No, 2 years. It's going to take me this whole year to fill it up, and then it's going to sit for a whole nother year. One more time. I think you're getting the idea. Not real hard. Here's a couple buckets that I got ready. So another major part of why this garden helps me, my recovery, and I don't know that this is a principle, it's just something that works for me, is this gives me a degree of self-sufficiency. When I am able to grow my food myself and harvest it and cook a meal from my garden, it makes me feel really good. There was a time I had food stamps, Social Security disability, a lot of help from a lot of people, and it never made me feel good. Thank God I had all that help, but it never made me feel good. As I got better and I started learning to do things that made me feel better, I got better and better and better to whereas I didn't have to rely on other people to help me survive, just survive. Now I learned how to do things that make me thrive. I live a wonderful life because I learned how to do things to make me feel better. And this is just one of the many examples of how I do that. Living a life pursuing my full potential, having a great garden, having a great food source, feeding my wife, giving produce to other people, and managing life, seeing stuff grow. I used to raise chickens and turkeys. I had animals, and those were real easy for me to interact with because there was life there. Well, I never thought there was life in plants until I grew plants. There's a lot of life in plants, so that's a great connection that I have with the garden. So I'm going to finish this up, and we'll get back to you the next time when we're actually going to be using the compost and planting it in the garden. All right, till next time, thank you for following the Chronicles of Don Weber Garden Recovery. So I'd like to end this video by doing a little summary explaining principles of recovery and something that I always have in the back of my mind is reaching the full potential, whether it's your personal full potential for recovery, and or as I talk about in this video, I want the full potential for my garden. So a principle of gardening, of raising plants, is you gotta have water, right? Without water, your garden's not gonna amount to much at all, right? You gotta have sunlight. Another principle: without sunlight, your plants just are not going to thrive. Your plants have got to have nutrients. That's why I do the compost. The compost is full of nutrients. You can't have lousy dirt, clay dirt, sand dirt, clay, crappy dirt, and just give your plants fertilizer, give them nutrients that way, and expect to have a really nice garden that's going to reach its full potential. So that's principles of gardening. Now, what your garden looks like, whether you want flowers or like me, vegetables, that doesn't matter. Your garden's going to be your garden, but the principles are the same. And that's what I really want to try to get people to learn about. What are the principles of recovery? So one of them is self-determination. I determine for myself what my garden is going to look like, the way I want it, what I want it to do, right? How am I going to make my garden so that it makes me feel good? I want it to produce vegetables, that's for sure, but most importantly is, what am I going to do with my garden to make me feel good? And I make all those decisions. And it's the same thing with recovery. Not everybody's going to have a vegetable garden. Not everybody's going to do logging like I do. But what are you going to do? Nobody can tell you what to do to make you have a successful recovery and reach your full potential. You got to learn to do it and figure it out and do it, right? Another principle is self-sufficiency. Got to do it myself, right? Nobody's out there planting the garden for me, right? I got to do it myself. I love when the garden is mature and is producing, and then I can feed myself, and I'm doing it. And I'm very conscious of the fact that I put the work into it, but I'm not the one that put the life into it. There's another force, and you call it God, you call it Mother Nature, you call it whatever you want, but there's another force that I'm working with, and I'll call it Mother Nature, the greatest force on earth, I think. And I make the decision to work with that force on earth. All right? And another last principle I'm going to give you for today is, I got up at 4:30 this morning, and I had a cup of coffee, and I was outside around, I think, 5 o'clock, and it was because I wanted to do it. You have to do things for your recovery that you want to do. You know, maybe you got to make your bed, or maybe you got to be to work on time. You got to do things that you got to do for life. Okay, that's great. We all got things that we got to do, but for recovery, if you're going to reach your full potential, you got to do things that you want to do. When I go into the woods, nobody's forcing me to go there. Nobody picks me up in the truck and says, "Come on, Don, it's time to go to work. Come on, Don, sun's up, time to go out in the garden." No, I want to do it. So, it definitely took me some time, some years to figure out what it was that I want to do. All right, so there's principles of recovery, and they apply to everybody. Principles apply to everybody. You don't have sunlight, you don't have a good garden. You don't have water, you don't have a good garden. You don't make your own decisions, you don't have a good garden. You don't get up yourself and go do it, it don't work. All right? Principles. Have a great day.